some things are so painful they'll leave a hole in your heart, but you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And I think moving out of that disappointment means that we don't necessarily forget what happened, or that it's okay that it happened,
Right.
or that we even completely heal that wound. There are emotional scars. There's place where we have that hole in our heart, but you can live a wonderful life with a hole in your heart. You can make love connections. You can go on to beautiful things in life, even with a hole in your heart, even with those emotional scars. And I think that's the goal. It's not to get over the disappointments, but to learn from them, move through them, and to have that wonderful life, even with the emotional scars of life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Love Sugar Podcast. I'm your host, Jeanne Byrd. Welcome to the Love Sugar Podcast, transforming love lives one bite at a time. I'm your host, Jeanne Byrd. I'm a love and relationship coach, specializing in finding love, nurturing love, and ending love, if necessary, in a healthy way. And I also have a Master of Science degree in advanced health coaching. You know, exploring love and romance through the lens of emotional and physical well-being is not often heard of, but it's really critical. Why? Because your experience of love and your perception of love is happening through your mind and your body. So to have the best experience in love, you need to address your intuition and nutrition. In today's episode, we'll be talking about breakdowns and disappointments and how they have the opportunity to turn into breakthroughs. One thing we can take to the bank in this life is that we will experience disappointments. But the question is, who will we be in the face of them? What's the automatic meaning that we make about ourselves when they happen? Most common is that we blame ourselves for poor judgment, that we failed, or done something bad or wrong. We may even allow ourselves to believe that our desire or goal wasn't meant to be, and that we're just totally out of alignment. And then we become humiliated and upset with ourselves. But wait, there is good news here. To quote the Alchemist author, Paul Coelho, he says, "You must not be afraid. You need to have sufficient courage to make mistakes. Disappointments, defeat, and despair are the tools that God uses to show us the way." And today we will discuss the ways that we can make empowered meaning out of them and use them as rocket fuel to launch us into where our soul is guiding us to go. And to discuss this juicy and complex topic with me today is my guest, Dr. Mark A. Hicks. Would you like to say hello, Mark?
Yes, hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So happy to have you here. So I'd like to speak to our listeners about Mark here. He's an author, speaker, and ghostwriter and relationship coach with expertise in mental health and family dynamics. Mark holds a Doctor of Ministry degree in Masters in Mental Health Counseling, a Master's of Divinity, and a Bachelor of Psychology. His educational background reflects his unwavering commitment to understanding the human psyche and guiding individuals towards healthy relationships and meaningful lives. Over the course of his professional life, Mark has ventured into various spheres, serving as a minister, a therapist, an international missionary, a recovery program director, a disaster response coordinator, and a radio host. His radio broadcast was a self-help themed program that aired nationwide in the Czech Republic. Mark's goal is to spread a message of love that is practical, tangible, and realistic for everyone, regardless of your relationship experience so far. In his book, Learning to Love, he teaches the 5 components of love that anyone can learn and practice to build healthy, happy, thriving relationships in every area of your life. Welcome to the Love Sugar Podcast, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's dive into our discussion about breakdowns, disappointments, leading to breakthroughs. First, let's talk about what precedes a breakdown. I'd like to say an intention. First, we have an intention for our lives, right? Or a particular goal at a particular stage in our life. So we write out our intention. And then life goes on, and then we experience a disappointment. So this is where we're tested, right? And many times it will be in the form of what we're talking about here in terms of disappointments, breakdowns. And so what we're talking about here is now this intention is really being put to the test. And I'm wondering, Mark, if you would like to share any experiences in your life that really tested you, that you created an intention and that life seemed like it had other plans for you.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. Along the way, I've had the pleasure of working with people from all age groups, and it's wonderful to hear the dreams of the young folks, the teenagers, the 20-somethings. And I was the same way. Somebody asked me one time when I was 18 years old, where are you going to be in 10 years? I could give them an easy answer of exactly what I thought would happen. And none of those things happened. As you talk with people who have lived a few decades, I have never met someone who said, yeah, life turned out just like I thought it would. It never happens that way. There's always twists and turns, sometimes better, sometimes worse than we expected. But for me, one of the things that put me on the path of becoming a relationship coach, focusing on love and relationships, writing my book, Learning Love, that I didn't know early in my life what I know now. And I ended up in a first marriage that was a complete disaster. It was a toxic relationship and ended in divorce. And I have the emotional scars to show for that. And that sort of put me on a path. It was a horrible disappointment. I was raised in a background that taught that marriage is forever and till death do you part. And when I got married, I truly believed it was meant to be forever. And it was not. And so that put me in a place that I could give up on love and relationships. And for a time, I thought that might be the case. But it really motivated me to try to understand what love was and how to live out a life of love and to understand it on a deeper level, and not just leave it to chance as we do so often, particularly in our younger years, of just sort of finding that person that we think we match well with and not really understanding what that means. And so that terrible disappointment and event in my life that was so painful really put me on a track of understanding on a much deeper level. And so that disappointment did lead to a breakthrough.
Did you set any intention during that time after you were going through that heartache, setting an intention for your future?
Yeah, I did. At first, my intention, just in pain and in frustration and heartache, was I'm just going to write off relationships. I'm never getting married again. But that changed over time, and I began to reflect and to know that I didn't have to be married. I didn't have to be in a relationship, and my intention was to only be in a healthy relationship. And Beautiful. I think that was different than my younger years when there's always a pressure to get married and get your career and get your house and all the things that we sort of check off the list as young adults. And I decided that my intention was to only have healthy relationships, and I couldn't have that. Then I was okay being alone. That was better than being in toxic relationships. And so my attention greatly changed over the years from being in a relationship, finding a relationship, to finding a healthy one. And that did come about. I am married again, and for nearly 14 years now, I've been wonderfully happy in that. And it's just completely different. I often tell folks I've had a good marriage and a bad marriage, and good is better. And so that's a big part of my intention now, is to help people, not just that I wanted this for myself, but to help people. Which is the intention of writing the book, Learning Love, in order to have that motivation to not only have it for myself, but to teach everyone that I could, that it is possible, even from disappointment, from dysfunctional relationships, from divorce, whatever it might be, that it is possible to move out of that disappointment to a different place of life.
And, in the work that I coach, we would say that experience of your first marriage was actually your sacred wound that served to become your superpower.
Yeah.
Because it really catapulted you to so many amazing things that you've done, as I read in your bio. It's just phenomenal.
I see life so much different after going through that. And one of the things that I learned, and one of the things that I often say and try to teach to everyone, is that there are experiences of life. There's pain of life. There's heartbreak, and some things are so painful they'll leave a hole in your heart. But you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And I think moving out of that disappointment means that we don't necessarily forget what happened, or that it's okay that it happened, or that we even completely heal that wound. There are emotional scars. There's a place where we have that hole in our heart, but you can live a wonderful life with a hole in your heart. You can make love connections. You can go on to beautiful things in life, even with a hole in your heart, even with those emotional scars. And I think that's the goal. It's not to get over the disappointments, but to learn from them, move through them, and to have that wonderful life, even with the emotional scars of life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful. And at the same time, I think we heal by being able to have this detached, wider angle perspective on that hole in your heart and how it happened, to be able to make empowered meaning of that situation. For example, you were in a toxic relationship, and you could look at it like, well, I didn't have the tools that I do now in order to navigate that relationship. And I really didn't know who that person was. And now, looking back 14 years later, happily married, I can see maybe the signs that I skipped over. I can see where maybe I didn't speak up when I needed to. I can see where I might have created healthy boundaries for myself.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn from the painful experiences of life that do make us better if we will allow them to. It's that great quote from Maya Angelou that said, when you know better, you do better. And
that's right.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've tried to do, is I know more now than I did before. So I try to live that, and I try to teach that. Even though I have those painful experiences, I was able to learn from those and do better.
I love that. And what part of your trajectory did you start getting into deciding to be a relationship coach? Was it immediately after your marriage?
No, it was some time later. I have worked as a therapist in general terms, and have worked with people in a number of different capacities. But when I started focusing on writing my book, I really felt that was a powerful subject that everyone needed to know, that we have such a need for love and healthy, happy relationships in the world, but so many people struggle with that. And so it really just evolved slowly. I don't know that it was ever a time that I decided, but as my book came together, as I felt inspired to write the book, and that became such a focus of my life, it sort of naturally led into relationship coaching, because now that I have written that and have made that such a focus of my writing, I do get approached on occasion for folks to say, would you help us? And of course, I'm glad to do that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful background and a wonderful segue into your life's work here. So let's move on to discuss the breakdowns that we have experienced. I have one breakdown I'd love to share about my own, that really all hell broke loose in my life when I set the intention in 2015, actually, to leave the film industry for good after 33 years. So I took retirement 5 years earlier. And when I did that, really, truly, all hell broke loose in my life in terms of monetarily and leaving I would have had a much larger pension, but I left all of that on the table because the desire within me was so strong to move into coaching people rather than, helping people on a film set, which is not quite the same thing. So I really answered that call, and everything was, as I said, just in chaos for about a couple of years as I made that transition. But I set my intention, and so that nothing outside of my intention was going to influence me. And I'm so happy that I did, because 10 years later, with a thriving coaching practice, it was the right decision. And I answered the call of my soul. And so that's, I think, a good example of when people set intentions, that regardless of what happens outside of us, the disappointments, the breakdowns, the setbacks, the delays, that we are focused on our goal and that we trust ourselves enough that we won't veer off the course.
Yeah, I think it's really knowing yourself, knowing who you are and where you are at this point of your life, and what your gifts and your calling is at this point in your life. To set that intention that might not have been the same as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I think so many people get caught up in what they do and what they have done and assume that that's who they will always be. And that's just not the case. We change as we go through life. And being in the film industry is a wonderful life, but that was your life then. There's a different life. There's a different calling, different purpose in life at different stages. And I think when we know ourselves, we're in touch with who we are, we know what our gifts and abilities are at this particular point of our life, it really helps us set that intention of the current intention of our life, not what we were at one time.
Exactly. And, that's what we talk about in the work that I do, that we set an outrageous intention. It's like my mentor, Catherine Woodward Thomas, says, set an unreasonable intention. So, meaning that it's so far outside of the identity that you have been inside of, that it would actually need a miracle in order for it to happen. But we're creating miracles every day in our life by the choices that we make and the actions that we take, so setting that intention to create a miracle in our life, that's what I did. I had no idea what was going to happen. I just trusted that if I fell, I would fall safely.
Yeah, I think you make plans in case things don't work out, because we know in life things don't always work out the way we want to. You have to have a plan B. If you do fall, how do you get back up? But I think knowing yourself means having that confidence in yourself. It means not allowing who you were and not allowing the people around you and society to define for you what your parameters are. Because sometimes that miracle, I think you're so right about that. We need to set those intentions beyond our horizon, beyond what we think we can easily do, and see what miracles come along. And I think sometimes it feels like a miracle, not because it's not within our reach, not because we can't do it, but because people have told us we can't, or send us a signal in some way that this is the limit. This is where things are in our family or in our community or in the people that are around you. This is where we live, and so this is where you live. And so it may feel like it's just impossible to reach beyond that. But if we have the courage to know who we are and not let other people define that, we may find that those miraculous things were well within our reach.
I love that. That is so, I'm so resonant with what you're saying. And it feels like, what you're talking about, basically family of origin, that, we're being told by society or our family of origin, no, you don't do it this way. This is what we do in this family. And to me, that is living a very fate-filled life, and I'm saying, no, we're living a destiny life, the life that I create, that I choose.
So right. And so many people are defined by their family of origin. And one of my motivations for writing about love and relationships is the recognition that there are a lot of people coming out of dysfunctional families, that are coming out of toxic and abusive families. And so many times we don't talk about that. And we just assume that because our family acted that way, that must be the way it is. And that doesn't have to be the way it is. We don't have to let our family of origin define us, or any other group for that matter. We get to decide who we are and live our destiny, live out our own intentions. And yes, as you mentioned, we might fall, but that's okay. We're learning how far we can go. And sometimes, as we discussed, sometimes that fall, that failure, that collapse is exactly what we need to learn that important lesson to make it to where we want to go.
In line with that, I'm really curious. I think the listeners would love to hear about your 5 components, and then for now to really maybe list them and then really focus on number 1 being grief and trauma, which is interesting. It's very, very intriguing. So I'd like you to share about that.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of folks are surprised by that. As I teach the 5 components of love, teaching what love is, the first component is grief. And when you're talking about love, a lot of people expect you to talk about bubblegum and butterflies, everything's sweet and beautiful. And there is a part of that, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But everyone, as we mentioned, goes through hardships. No one gets through life without scars. And you talk to people that have closed themselves off to relationships, that have put up barriers, that are keeping people at arm's length, shutting people out, not able to connect with people, even people that they love, that they live with, that they have relationships with, but yet they're distant and disconnected. You talk to those people and they will always tell you a story of pain, a story of hardship and grief, a place where they have been hurt in their life, and they put up those walls and those barriers. And if we're going to stay connected, even with the hurts of life, the pain of life, the disappointment of life, we have to learn how to grieve. And so that's our comeback story. That's the floor, the foundation which we're building our house of love, is that grief, that ability to come back from the hurts and the pain of life and stay connected, as I said earlier, to live that beautiful, wonderful life, even with a hole in your heart. And that's why it's the first component, because that's the story of everyone. Everyone goes through hardship, and everyone has to work through that in order to stay connected in those relationships. But then there is the emotional side. There's the sweet side of emotion, and that's the second component of learning how to connect with one another on an emotional level. That's easy for some people, not as easy for others. Some people have to learn that one, practice it. It's okay if it doesn't come natural, but some people have to learn how to share their feelings a little bit, share their love for someone in an emotional way. The third component appeals more to those folks. That's the practicality side. That it's emotion brings us together. Practicality keeps us together. That's the communication skills. That's the health practices, as you teach so well, about our nutrition, our physical health, how we stay connected to each other because of our mind and our body. That's a practical reality that we need. Taking care of our mental health, taking care of our financial situation and making good financial decisions. How many times have we heard someone say, I love them, but I can't live with them? That's a failure of the practicality. That's when practicality fails. They still have the emotion, the component of emotion, but they failed in the practicality side. The fourth is what we just discussed a moment ago, of acceptance, of knowing who we are and accepting who we are, because that's critical for being able to accept other people. We're never going to be able to love someone else if we don't love ourselves. We fool ourselves sometimes into thinking we can, but we cannot. Brene Brown did some amazing research on this, that you cannot love people more than you love yourself. And then finally, the fifth component is passion. And when we say passion, very often we think about sexual intimacy, and that's obviously part of it, but it's more than that. That's just part of the story. It's about a passion for life. It's about having fun, enjoying your life, enjoying the people in your life, your spouse or partner, your family, your children, your extended family, your friends and coworkers. As we enjoy the people in our life, enjoy the activities, enjoy what we do for a living, whatever it is, have as much fun in that as we possibly can. Now, obviously, life is serious. That's why we have practicality as the third component. And life hurts. That's why we have grief as the first component. But despite the pain of life and the seriousness of life, let's not forget the fun and live in that passion, because that's what puts the wind in our sails. That's what really gets us out of bed in the morning to face life in a joyous way, an excited way, and really enjoy the love that we have with the people around us. And I contend that if you have those 5 components and practice those in your life, anyone can build healthy, happy, thriving relationships. Even if you've come from a dysfunctional family or been through a divorce, you can build relationships with those 5 components of love.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so comprehensive and inclusive. It's like really the definition of humanity, really. Yeah. I love that. Beautiful. And as I always like to say, the past doesn't get the final say in your future. You do.
Exactly. Yeah, it really has nothing to do with our current state and our future. It's just things we can learn from, but it doesn't dictate anything.
Yeah.
Whether that be our past experiences, our family, growing up, whatever it is, those are experiences that we learn from. And as I said, may leave some scars along the way if they were painful experiences. They might be joyful memories, but whatever they are, they don't define where we go from here.
That's right. That's right. So, I can't forget about food, Mark, in the Love Sugar podcast. Right. So I'm just curious, so when we're in breakdown, when we're consumed with grief, those food choices, they could be pretty compromised, don't you think?
Absolutely. And one of the things that people fail to understand about grief is that it's hard work physically. We think about grief as an emotional process, and it is, but it takes a toll on the body. And if you're going to go through grief, if you're going to have that place where you can go through that emotional turmoil to come out at a better place in life, you have to approach it as you would any other physical process. You need to be drinking water. You need to be getting healthy foods, that nutrition. You need to be getting a little bit of exercise. Yeah. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete, but you need to be doing the things that make you healthier in order to have the emotional stamina to go through the process of grief. And one of the reasons people struggle so much with grief is not because they don't have the ability to go through it emotionally. It's because we get pulled into this idea, well, if I just ate junk food, I would feel better. Or if I stayed in bed, all day, I would feel better. If I just stay up all night worrying about it, maybe I'll come up with an answer. All these things that we get, I don't even know where that idea comes from, but it seems to be universal that we get into that place. We have these ideas that we want that comfort food. We stay up all night or we sleep all the time. And we do these things that are terribly unhealthy, thinking that maybe I'll feel better, and it won't. We need what we know to be true.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a way of numbing out, to eat that junk food, to stay up all night, or to conversely, to go to sleep and sleep it away is actually not leaning into the grief. So you're not really, truly going through a grieving process if you're doing those things. Right. Rather to with help and soothing yourself to lean into those hard feelings and feel those feelings, feel that grief. That's the way through to the other side.
They're healthy feelings. They don't feel good. They're not enjoyable,
right.
But they are healthy. They are a process that we have been given to heal. Grief is a healer. It's not enjoyable, but it is a healer, and it is beneficial for us. And so to try to withhold from that, to try to grit our teeth and not feel those feelings, to try to go on like nothing happened, none of those things work. Grief is a good thing, even though it doesn't feel good. It's a healing process.
I like to call it sometimes our dark guru, because grief is really a teacher.
Yeah, I love that. Can I borrow that?
You certainly may. I'm sure I'm not the originator of that, because it's back here somewhere in my education.
Yeah,
I love that. So, I'd like to just kind of talk about some of the things we can do, just as you were saying, on a practical level. And I'm sure some of the components of your book come into this too. But when we experience a breakdown, what to do about it. So I'd like to just share some of these things I came up with and have you weigh in on this with me. And so one of the things, when you experience a breakdown, a disappointment, an obstacle, just what we were talking about a minute ago, accept and acknowledge your feelings. It's so important, especially when faced with disappointment, to acknowledge how you're feeling about it. Feeling that frustration, feeling that sadness, feeling that rage, maybe, so it's just really important to feel those feelings.
It is. And the idea that if we try to suppress them, they'll go away is a mistake. They're going to be there. They're going to come out in some way or another. And so you're doing yourself a great service if you go ahead and feel them and express them in a healthy way and process those. Running from them isn't going to help.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. And then the other thing is to reflect on the disappointment. So, yes, there's a lot of feelings attached to it, but once you've accepted all those feelings, identified them, is to just reflect on this disappointment from a wider angle, detached perspective, so that you can get curious, about those expectations that you had before the disappointment had. And maybe there's another route to take in a more circuitous way that would even be more beneficial to what your original goal was. So to really reflect on that disappointment and not to sweep that under the carpet.
Yeah, we see so many people that make the same mistakes over and over. And I think what you're just saying there is the reason is people fail to do that. They fail to reflect and to realize the path that led them there and to make the changes they want to make. If we just sort of wing it, or going back to our family of origin, sometimes we just do it because we were raised that way, even though it's not working for us. That's the way I was raised. If we take the time to reflect and analyze and realize how we got to that place in life that disappointed us and what we can do different and what we can learn, we can help ourselves to do things differently, to set that different intention and find that different path.
Yeah, and find the different path. I love that. And then the other one is to practice self-compassion, to really be kind to yourself during this very complex and tender time, and reach out for support, a therapist, a coach like ourselves, and really get that help and have someone help you gain new insights into the situation, to really hold it for multiple perspectives.
I think that's so important. If you've made a mistake, if you've ended in a bad place, you're not the first. We all find ourselves wishing we had taken a different route and finding ourselves disappointed. And we all need help. That you're not the first person that comes to a place that you're just not exactly sure where to go from here. And one of the things I write in my book, I believe everyone should be in some sort of counseling or coaching or therapy of some kind. Everyone. I get a little pushback on that sometimes. That's been actually a little controversial with some folks.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? Oh,
and
really?
the
Okay.
pushbacks I understand. One of people say, well, sometimes people can't afford a therapist, and I understand that there are financial situations, but I would also argue that some people can't afford a dentist. That doesn't negate the need for a dentist. Everyone still needs
That's
a
right.
dentist. We have a doctor, we have dentist, we have a mechanic. Unless you can fix your own car, you need a professional. And most of us, I think the majority of the public can't fix their car most of the time. So we need a professional. Life is complicated. Mental health is complicated. It is
Yes, it
I think
is.
it is just as necessary to have a therapist, a coach, a counselor, someone that can help you navigate the mental and emotional aspects of life just as much as you need a physical doctor to help you navigate your physical health, or a nutritionist, or a health coach.
Yeah.
You need just as much a coach to help you with all of these things of life that we're discussing, the disappointments and the triumphs. And life is just so complicated. It is so difficult.
Yeah.
It's more difficult now, I would argue, than it's ever been before in history. It's not better or
Oh,
worse. I'm not going to argue that side. I'll leave that for people to choose whether it's better or worse today. But I will certainly say it is more complicated today than it's ever been in
yeah.
our history, for better or
Yeah.
for worse. And I think because of that, we need
And,
help.
yeah. And I think, well, yes to everything that you've said. And also, the good news is about that we have more affordable help available. Like they have that BetterHelp site where you can actually get a therapist like over the phone
Yeah.
and call in. And so, and this is very affordable, so there are ways that you can seek help, and there are, city and county organizations that provide help for people. So
Yeah.
it's not just, your $400 an hour situation. You can get help, for less. So let's move into what else we can do. Of course, I mentioned briefly, the seeking the support, but I think more importantly is focus on what you can control, right? So you might not be able to change the outcome of the disappointment that you experienced, but what you can control is how you frame it.
Yeah.
What you feel about it. What's the meaning that you're going to make about it, and really look to seek higher ground. So again, that you can open up your eyes to another way around this that will even be more beneficial than what your original thought was about it. So really focusing on that.
Yeah, I think that word that you
I
used,
think,
meaning, is so powerful that when we look for meaning to things, and that's not to say there's a necessary profound meaning in everything, but there is something to learn. There's some avenue that we can become a better person and more understanding of situations. So we look for that meaning instead of necessarily ruminating and just the sadness of it. Look for
right.
what that means to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to that point, in my coaching, we really try to refrain from asking why questions like, why did that happen to me? But rather to ask questions that are propelling growth forward, that are empowering. For example, what's the growth opportunity here for me in this situation? What am I supposed to learn from this situation? How is it absolutely happening for me instead of to me or against me?
Yeah, there's so many times that we might look back and realize that even those bad things at the time, we might say it's the best thing that ever happened to us. We might really be grateful for those difficult experiences. And one of the things about that question, why, I always have people ask, imagine what answer you would be satisfied with. Let's imagine an answer. If you ask the question why, let's think of an answer where you would say, well, okay, that's fine. There's usually not one. I mean, you think about these terrible tragedies of life. Why did I have to go through that? Why did that person have to die? Why did I have to, experience this? There's no good answer to that we would ever accept. And so we just have to look for what can we learn from it, because there is no answer to that. If we get caught up in that, it's just a trap.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. A very good point. So again, that's pretty much going into my next one. I think we've just covered it. Looking for opportunities for growth, so just really looking to see this as an opportunity, helping you become more resilient, helping you become stronger in this situation, more self-aware, so that in the future, if something is a bit off, you'll see it coming. You'll trust your intuition enough to maybe not go down the path that you did previously that led to the disappointment, but rather have new tools in your toolkit to just see things coming and make a different choice.
Yeah, life brings wisdom if we let it.
That's right. That's right. I love that. And I think the last one is really to practice gratitude. And I know this sounds a little counterintuitive from a disappointment and a breakdown, but cultivating this gratitude for the positive aspects of your life, everything that is working. I mean, really just the basics. The sun is shining. I have water to drink, a bed to sleep in, the things that we take for granted, just joy in watching a flower blossom, things like that. The gratitude just produces this energy that just has us feel more life affirming.
And it's so important to do that intentionally, on purpose, every day, because our brains are wired to protect us. Our brains are wired to look out for the dangers of life. And so if we're not paying attention, we aren't necessarily going to notice the good things sometimes. We're looking for who's going to hurt us, what's going to be a danger to us. That's just a natural instinct. And so we have to train ourselves to think above those lower base instincts. We have to train ourselves to think on a higher level, to see the good things, to not just look out for the stuff that would hurt us, going all the way back to, the ancient world when people had to always watch out for the wild animals. We don't have to do that anymore, but there's still lots of things that will hurt us. And so we're still wired up to keep an eye out for those naturally. As we learn to think on a higher level, we have to learn to think on what you're speaking of there. What are the things I can truly be grateful for today? And train our brains to notice those as much as we notice the bad stuff.
Exactly. I mean, really, if you want to get really into the weeds about it, it's really answered prayer.
Yeah.
In a weird way, right? A breakdown is answered prayer because something was off. And it feels to me that life is guiding us, just like, the quote from The Alchemist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
That's the source.
That even though it doesn't feel good, this is a sign that it's time to take a new direction, that this is a clear indication that we are not on the right path. And instead of being left on that destructive or negative path, we've been given a clear indication, even though it might be painful, that it's time to take a new path.
Yeah. And sometimes, as you're saying, the pain is so great that we collapse and contract into our pain and then obviously exacerbate the matter with our nutrition choices as well. But the invitation, the encouragement or the lighting the fire under your tushy invitation here is regard it as answered prayer. Truly regard it as, I'm putting my stake in the ground here. I'm going for it and I will find a way. This is my wake-up call.
Yeah, those that have that attitude will find a way.
I'm wondering, Mark, has there been something subsequent to your divorce in your life where you could feel yourself letting go of the way you had previously defined yourself and just felt like you were catapulting yourself into your future, like almost like you were a participant? It was so shocking.
I'm a bit in that position right now in where I am in life.
Great.
It's interesting you asked that because most of my life, I have worked in professional positions where I was an employee, and I tried to be the best employee for the team that I was on and had people directing. And now, for the most part, I am working independently as an author and as a ghostwriter and as a coach. And I'm not part of a team. I make all my own decisions about my career path. And that can be a frightening thing, but I believe in what I'm doing. I do work I have a part-time gig with a ghostwriting agency that I work with a team there doing some ghostwriting. But for most of my professional life now, I am setting my own course rather than working for a company or an organization. And so that's new, and it can be a little frightening. And I'm not 20 years old anymore, just starting out, but it feels like it. It feels like I'm a young person again, starting out in my career path. And it's scary, but it's also exciting. And I'm setting that intention because I truly believe in what I'm teaching. I believe that people need to learn what love is and how to live that out. And I believe that has so much impact on our life in so many areas of life, as we've discussed, from nutrition to our grief process to how we view ourselves. All of that comes into our life of love. And I believe in it so much that I'm willing to take the risk of venturing out on my own path and looking to spread this message any way I can.
Yes. I'm behind you. I'm standing with you on that. I'm excited for you. Yes. And, I'm in this exact same position as you. I shared earlier about, becoming a coach and retiring from the film business. But more recently, yes, I've had my coaching practice, but actually trying to become more of an entrepreneur and step even further outside, to do different things, to do this podcast totally outside of my comfort zone. Never in a million years would I think that I would be doing this, but here I am. And, I'm joining a mastermind group and trying to write a chapter in a compilation book, and hopefully then segueing into a book. So yes, I am totally outside of my comfort zone. And that's really where the juice is, isn't it? That's why you're saying, you feel young. Doesn't matter if you are young, right. You feel young. It's that, joie de vivre, that life force that you have now, that just propelling you forward. And it's just so... It's very compelling.
Yeah, when you believe in what you're doing, you believe in your message, you believe you have something important to contribute to the lives of people, it does lead to a lot of excitement. Even though there is some fear, there's some uncertainty of where the path will lead. That's okay. We follow it, see where it goes.
So segueing back to the breakdown, the old saying, rejection is God's protection. Yeah. So, I think that the rejection, which turns out to be answered prayer, which really is about a belief in life. Yeah. I think that we need to remember about life, that life is actually guiding us. If we are, like you and I are sharing about our paths, and we're committed and we have holistic motivation, then it's like life is saying, okay, you're ready now. Let's go. Let's go, Jeannie. Let's go, Mark. We're going to help you. We're going to be your partner. We're going to guide you through to achieve what those deepest desires are for you.
And it makes such a difference.
So I don't ever want to skip over life.
Yeah, it makes such a difference if you believe that, to think that life is for us and not against us, that we have that force of life that is actually working in our favor, that it isn't always pleasant. We don't always understand why things happen. We never understand why things happen if they're hurting us, but the things that come out of that very often lead us onto that better path, that we realize that maybe what we were looking for wasn't the best path for us. If we understand life is for us, not against us, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a basic orientation that life is good.
Yeah.
that life is good, that life is fundamentally trustworthy, and that we can feel safe with life. And I know that, we could get into what's going on in the world today, which we won't. But basically, I think that feeling about internal safety helps us. If we're feeling internally safe, it's so much easier to feel that life is happening for us.
Yeah, I think without getting into a lot of the turmoil we experience, I think some of that is motivated by just this sense that we're not okay, that we're looking for something to happen, for someone to come along that can save us, and that feeling of angst, that feeling of uncertainty is pretty frightening. And if we can find that place where we know that we are okay, that we can accept ourselves, we can accept others, even if we don't always agree with one another, and that we find passion in life, and that we have the confidence of knowing that even if things do go wrong on occasion, that we can grieve and we can find a path through that to a better place. If we have that in our life, which again is the components of love, then we have that sense of being okay, that we have that sense of love and connection. And maybe we're not quite so tense about all the turmoil in the world.
Yeah. Well, and with, fueled with the love that we have for ourselves and whatever relationships that we are in that also fuel us and bring us joy and comfort, we also have those desires that are working inside of us to whatever we can do as a single person. Yeah. If it's, volunteering or whatever it is, to do one little simple act that could make the world better. And again, that's very individual. So, but just as an invitation for all of our listeners here to just stretch ourselves a little bit beyond our comfort zone. Basically, I feel that, if I am uncomfortable, then I am on the edge of my own evolution.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Absolutely.
That's pretty much where I know I need to be, because I'm pretty much out of my comfort zone every day.
Well, you're learning then. You're striving for new things. You're looking for those miracles that you spoke of earlier. And I think we can have those in our work, a volunteer work or whatever it might be, as you mentioned. We might think, well, what difference does it make for one person to try to do good in the world? But we might find out there is that miracle that we are able to do much more good than we ever thought. And you get just a few people doing that in an area, it makes a huge difference in life.
I couldn't agree more. I know I had a friend the other day who told me about her mother, who was she had her granddaughter in a school in California, believe it or not, that didn't have any air conditioning. And it was like in the 90s. And they were trying to keep the kids in school. And so the mother got a bunch of other mothers together, and they put a petition and raised money, and they got air conditioning in the school for the kids.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of advocacy, it's that kind of commitment to make the world a better place that we can all do on some level, whatever that means to us.
I think that's right. If you just do what you can do, just do as much as you possibly can. And you don't have to even try to do more than that. Don't worry about the things you can't. Just do what you're able to do and see what good that does.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I think we're reaching the end of our conversation today, Mark, and I'm just wondering, any particular takeaway that you can identify you want to share from our conversation?
Well, I really like your focus on intention. I think that really sums up everything, that we set that intention. And what I hope people do is set that intention for building those healthy relationships through exactly what you teach, the diet, but also through all the components of love that we've talked about, of setting that intention, because that is what makes our life better, makes our families better, makes life better.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I think my takeaway is I'm just really intrigued by putting grief as the number one component of the 5 components of love. So I'm really encouraging people to get the book, Learning Love. I believe it's on Amazon, right?
It is on Amazon, yes.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes. And yes, to really learn these components and to start working on them every day in your everyday life.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much. I'm really deeply grateful for this conversation to really outline and articulate the gift that breakdowns give us in our life so that we can be able to see them with a different perspective so that we're not taken out of the game by them. But again, that we look at them as answered prayer and thank you, God. So anyway, Mark, thank you for your contribution and all your vast expertise. I'm so grateful, really, for you joining here with me on the Love Sugar podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for listening, everyone. And as always, remember to take care of yourself first. Thank you for listening and for watching if you're joining us on YouTube. If you got value out of this conversation, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next episode of the Love Sugar podcast drops. Until next time, always take care of yourself first.